Good evening, everyone. My name is Varun, and I'm part of the success team here at Amplitude. And for our first Insights panel, I'm joined here by Jon Edvald, who leads the data science team at QuizUp. Previous to QuizUp, he ran his own text-based analytics company called Clara, which was later acquired by Jive Software. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Jon for the first time, even before he had joined QuizUp. And over the last several months, I've had the pleasure of having multiple conversations around him. And it's been really interesting to see him join a company and make sense of the data infrastructure there and figure out processes and features needed to actually grow a fast-growing company. So thank you, Jon, for joining us. Also, one more thing, he actually flew all the way from Iceland to join us here for the Growth Clinic, so we really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me over. It's always fun to break out of the rather breezy weather in Iceland and get to the sun here. You've been complaining about the weather here. It's fine for me. And yeah, it's been a pleasure working with you guys for the last 4 months. Definitely learned a lot, and it's been a good ride.
Thank you. All right. So I think for those of us who may not be familiar with QuizUp, I think we should. Let's start with having you tell us everyone a little bit more about QuizUp, what you guys do, and some of the more strategic bets that you guys have made as a company in the last 6 months.
Sure. So QuizUp is, I'd say, arguably the largest trivia game in the world. It launched in 2013 and was one of the best launches ever in the App Store. We have about 40 million signups so far. It's been a very interesting couple of years. So QuizUp starts as this trivia game. But the vision has always been to connect people through their shared interests. And as QuizUp has grown, the product has kind of evolved from being just a trivia game into a social network that is also a game. And some of the largest strategic choices we've made have been to that effect. So we launched QuizUp 2.0, a major redesign of the app, in May. And that really emphasizes the social aspect. So now we have these communities around every quiz topic. And it's really evolving into something beyond just a trivia app. It's evolving into a place where people meet different people with shared interests. The scope of the app has broadened beyond being just a game. Recently we had, this summer, we had like a viral burst in activity emerging in France. And in France, people are starting to use QuizUp as a dating app. So it's kind of like a Tinder type of thing, where you can actually get to know people based on their interest and not just what they put on a profile picture and say what they like, which is pretty cool.
That's interesting. And you guys are also planning to launch a TV show soon, next year?
Oh yeah, good lord. So we recently signed an agreement with NBC, and there will be a primetime TV show simply called QuizUp, launching hopefully March next year, so that sort of time frame. Which, yeah, primetime Sundays, they say, and we're expecting a huge amount of traffic. All concentrated in a single hour, so we have a lot of sweaty server engineers working that out. So yeah, that's definitely gonna have a huge impact on our growth going forward.
Awesome. That's exciting. Those are clearly very exciting times at QuizUp. All right. So the next thing that I wondered, ever since we had our first conversation and then you flew to Iceland and you joined QuizUp, and in the following conversations you've had, is that when you joined QuizUp and you have this company which has billions of rows of data per month, how do you get around finding what do we even measure? What even matters? What are the key KPIs we track? Why do they matter? And when we identify those, are there any examples of how do you put processes in place to see if we have the appropriate infrastructure in terms of front-end and back-end tools to measure those and report on them on a regular basis?
Sure. Well, it's a pretty broad question, I guess. So yeah, I can talk a little bit about just how we approach data in general. I'm part of a data team, and we work really closely with all the product teams, all the management, and we are constantly looking for both measuring our current success and also looking for indicators and clues as to what we should do next, what's working, what isn't, and it's an ongoing conversation with all the product teams. When the product teams set out to do something, they identify something as something that's worth working on. Say, you know, they feel like we should improve our chat messaging in the app. We first sit down and we start by defining what would be good KPIs for that. What's a good measure of success if we set out to do that development. And we use that information and we go and analyze the data that we currently have. So we look to see, is it an actual problem? Do we really believe that, upping those KPIs, saying like, increasing the number of chat messages sent, just as an example, has a meaningful impact on how users retain in our app, the virality of the app, that sort of thing. So it's definitely a dialogue, and it's a process that touches on everybody in the company, and engineers are involved to basically. So we work closely with engineers to figure out what we can measure, how we can easily measure it. We have strict definitions of how they should measure it. So pretty elaborate processes to make sure that our tracking is done correctly. Right. So it's a versatile gig that I found myself in. But yeah.
Awesome. Just like keeping the conversation going on that front. So, you mentioned that you identify a key KPI, what would make that successful. I want to touch on an idea of like what is the life cycle of an idea. So you or someone on your team has a hypothesis that this is something that could be a key metric of growth for this particular KPI that we have. Mm-hmm. How do you go about, building that hypothesis, finding that, verifying it, and then last but not the least, the most important part is putting that into action. Do you have any examples of that?
Sure. So we're always honing in on what are the most important KPIs for us as a company, and we obviously keep a close eye on high-level metrics like retention. And sign-up rate and that sort of thing. But when we're developing a product, we can impact retention and we can impact more specific KPIs. So from a hypothesis, a good example is something we had a hunch that how much our users use our social features would be a good indicator of how they retain in our app. So that's a hypothesis right there. Using Amplitude, for example, we can very easily see, using the growth discovery engine, which is awesome, by the way, we can basically put forth that hypothesis and validate that hypothesis. So, being a data-driven company, you always want to shorten that cycle from hypothesis to action, and we can just define what constitutes being social in the app. We can feed that into the growth discovery engine, and we can examine how predictive that is of being retained a week later or a month later. And we just had this hunch, and we kind of knew that it would be a factor just based on qualitative research and just intuition. But we can really quantify it using those tools. And what we kind of honed in on was that it didn't really matter so much if you used the social features in the first day, which was our original thinking. Yeah. It mattered more, anywhere in the first week would be the best indicator of whether that user would then, become a social user and keep using the app a week later or a month later. And that's something that would have been very difficult to decipher just through SQL queries and such. So it really, it makes that process a lot easier. You can feed the assumption into hypothesis into a tool, and rather than kind of digging around and asking all these different questions and hoping for an answer.
Got it. And were you able to put that into action? Did you make any changes on your platform?
Absolutely, yeah. So that really informed how we approach the onboarding of a user.
Right.
So, if we just, assume that we're correct in thinking that, getting a user to do something social, and when I say social, I mean, anything like visible on a news feed, like you like a post, or you comment on a post, or you send somebody a chat message, some interaction with other people in the app. If we would just gone by the original assumption that doing it in the first day is a key indicator, we would have designed our onboarding in a different way. So realizing that it's really critical that people just do it sometime in the first week of use, because people tend to use QuizUp a lot in their first week. We designed the onboarding process in such a way that we can just kind of encourage you as you use the app to do these things one by one, learn how to use the social features, rather than kind of coercing you to do it in the first day. So it definitely informed how we improve our onboarding process. And that's something we're still working on. That improved onboarding process is in fact still in A/B testing. So we're just kind of honing in on something that actually works.
Got it. Earlier you mentioned you work closely with engineers. We've been in calls where you've talked. A lot of community managers and editorial team at QuizUp also use Amplitude heavily. So I want to touch upon that idea of having a culture of analytics. And there are like two schools of thought there. One is that you have an insights team and a data science team who are like the internal support for anything data oriented, and the second is that you develop a culture of being data informed throughout your organization. In your experience, have you found that one or the two models work better? And specifically at QuizUp, how do you go about going with either of those models?
So we've definitely done a bit of both. And we've been just kind of figuring out what's the most effective approach for us. And what I have noticed is that, we have this data team. If we don't have a policy on the matter, and if we just kind of go about our business, we'll get inundated with requests from everywhere, and we'll have all our time is going to be consumed answering questions for other people in the company. Right. People that think they can't figure that out themselves, or don't feel they have the knowledge or the tooling or whatever the case may be. So we've been, even just last weekend we had an offsite where we're kind of figuring out what the team's mission actually is, and what our role should be within the company. And we are definitely on the line that we should be spending more time on improving our tooling and educating people to make them more self-sufficient in finding the answers they need. So, while it may be a good approach for some companies to have kind of like a data service desk where you can just ask a question and get an answer that's kind of queued up. And to a degree, there's always going to be certain things that we will have to go and dig in to answer. We feel like the long-term investment is really, we should be investing a time in making everybody at QuizUp capable of reading and deciphering data, and going into the tools like Amplitude and figuring things out for themselves. At least give it a go before they try, start spending our time on it. And that may change, as our company grows. But for now, I think that's the best approach. And I think it has that side effect. If everybody's always thinking of how can I support my decisions with data, and if people feel self-sufficient in leveraging data, I think it will positively impact the company as a whole, because you get put off if there's barriers between you and the information you need. Right. And even if we have a super helpful data team, that's still a barrier. Right. If you can go and find out yourself what you need to do, and support your assumptions or decisions, you're more likely to do it. So that's kind of where we're coming from, and we definitely want to spend more time educating and enabling people at the company.
Got it. Thank you. That's great to hear. And we have a lot of product and growth folks here. You've had experience running your own analytics company, and now at QuizUp you're running managing billions of rows of data. do you have like, if there was like one piece of advice you were to give to someone that, this is the cardinal rule of of like, if you have to build a growth team, if you are like focused on using data informed decisions to grow your company, you have, this is something to always consider. Like,
that's not an easy question at all. So, one thing, I mean, don't be afraid of data. That's kind of, that's the first thing that pops into mind, because it can be kind of daunting, especially if that's not your background. I mean, I have an engineering background. As you said, I've run an analytics company, so I look at data and I'm happy. I'm ecstatic. It's just, yeah, lots of billions of rows. What can I do with it? It can appear daunting to anybody that hasn't been spending that much time in it, but it's always going to be worth the effort. And I'd say first step, invest in the right tooling to make it easy. Don't try and build it in-house unless you actually are an expert, and just grow from there. Start simple, grow. Your needs are going to expand. You're going to want more advanced tooling, and yeah, I could go on. That's the one advice. It's not very succinct, but
That definitely makes sense.
Hi, my name is Kevin. I work for a company called PlanGrid as a data scientist, and I'm just curious how big your company is and how big your data science team is in particular.
Sure, that's an easy one. So the company is about 90 people now, all based in Iceland. So when I joined a data science team of 4, and we're doubling in size pretty quickly now, and we aim to continue to grow that team and just kind of expand our purview, if anything. So definitely recommend a good-sized data team because your needs are just going to grow.
Hi, David Godai. I'm one of the founders of Ideally. I'm wondering if you could shed some light on statistical significance. I'm guessing now with 75 million users, that's less of a challenge, but maybe in your prior role or earlier on at QuizUp, how you were thinking about statistical significance.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, it is a luxury to have this many users. It means that we don't have to run our A/B tests for that long. We expose the test to 5% of our population, and usually we'll have meaningful results within days, which is awesome. It's definitely very different in my last gig where we struggled doing analytics on our own analytics product because our user base was so small. We had users numbered in the tens and not in the millions. I'd say it's go with what you have. I mean, I don't know. Get more users. Is that good advice? It definitely helps.
Yeah, so I just you gave an overview of how you used analytics to alter your onboarding process. Could you give us some more detailed examples of like what exactly you changed? I assume you're talking more than just like the first few screens they swipe through when they install the app. It's more of a after that experience as well. So the details on what you did for that.
Sure. So we've tried a few different things. There is a very short onboarding process when you sign up for the app, but we always wanted people to find out how to use it. And the experiment that we have running now, which has promising results, basically you have like a home screen in the app, and when you're a new user, you get like a pane of 4 different icons that with check marks on them once you've completed that action. So you can just read. Instead of us like walking you through the app and telling you, click the like button here, we want people to navigate to those things themselves. So what we're experimenting with now is explaining how to do stuff, not having links to actually go and do it, but encourage people to do that, and then they'll see like these checkboxes on their home screen once they've completed that action. They can also dismiss the tutorial, but it seems to be quite successful so far. It has, at this point, it's a stable product, so the improvements we make are not gonna like massively, modify our retention rates, but it's incremental improvements, but they are statistically significant. So yeah, definitely tried a lot of different approaches. Happy to talk through that later.
Hey, what's up? Jon, right? I'm Pat. But my question was, We've talked about onboarding, we've talked about retention. In terms of growth, like, has there been any like in-app hacks that you've used statistically that drove some decisions to drive more growth? So like, what particularly?
So when you say hacks, what can
like
you?
whether it was an in-app hack to share, to invite friends, was there anything like statistically driven that you were able to, see that allowed you to either build a product feature or, drive more growth?
So now I'm kind of recalling. So I've only been at QuizUp for 4 months. I don't recall in that time frame some hack that we did that really spurred growth. I have been seeing a lot of incremental improvements, and sharing is definitely one thing. So we've been bolstering our out-of-app sharing. So like when you earn an achievement in a game, you can share it on Facebook. One thing, so fairly recently we opened up the platform. So now there's a thing called My QuizUp. You can create your own quizzes and, by extension, your own communities. I wouldn't call that a hack. That's a major feature development, but that's definitely spurred growth. It means that people can create their own content and share it outside of the app, and that's been definitely had a meaningful difference. I'd say we're at that point. We've had this product for launched in November 2013. We're not seeing like hacks that create like major changes in how people interact with the app. We're iterating on the app, so it's always going to be smaller improvements, but they are meaningful. I mean, just in the last 4 months, we've increased our retention by. I'm wondering how much I should say here, but by a lot. So it adds up to all these little changes that we're doing. It adds up to a lot, and getting our retention rates above like a certain inflection point is really all we need to do. We don't need to double it. We need to kind of get it to a place where we want it to be, and then we have this sustaining social network of people that are inviting each other. All our growth is now organic. We don't do any advertising, but yet we are growing in terms of users.
I think to that point, I think it's important to understand that I think investing in growth while having a terrible retention is a futile effort, because
Hi, I would just like to get a little bit more perspective on like the analytics and experimentation process that you all undergo. Like, how do you prioritize ideas or experiments, then you analyze them and potentially iterate on them? Just a little bit more detail would be great.
Sure. So QuizUp is a very dynamic company, and we keep changing the way we do these things. When I joined, all the teams were different. Everything's been shaken up in the meantime, I think twice. And that's just, we adapt to changing priorities. But the basic process is this. So people come up with ideas or hypotheses, and we call them opportunities. And we have this definition of an opportunity. For an opportunity to get up on we use a lot of Post-its, and we stick things to walls. For an opportunity to get up on a wall, we would need to have scoped the impact. Like, how many users is this going to impact? How many users do we expect to gain by adding this feature? What are the KPIs we monitor by both prior to and after implementing the feature? And and obviously like how we actually want to go about it, like designs and sketches and things. And then if it actually gets to be implemented, we have like a kickoff meeting with the engineering team, with the development team that does it. That involves product managers, at least one person from the data team, and we really dig into like how we want to measure the success of the feature, whether we need to A/B test it or not. Ideally, we would A/B test everything, but there's a certain like cost factor with that, especially if you have to spend time analyzing the results. So we do evaluate that, but we want to get better at A/B testing more, and make people again more self-sufficient doing that by improving our tooling. But yeah, so we kick off with that. So we have a clear specification on how we want to measure it. The feature development completes, and then we follow up. If there's an A/B test, we then decide like how we want to roll it out. Do we want to roll it out at all? Do we need to go back to the drawing board, change some implementation, that sort of thing? That's kind of the basic process, and what we're trying to do is get better at it. Make that process shorter, make it more rapid.
Hi, are you able to talk about your data stack, in particular where you store your data and what you use to look at it?
Sure. So we've used a number of different tools. There's Mixpanel. We have been slowly but surely migrating off of Mixpanel to Amplitude. I'm not here to plug the product, but it is what we're doing. It's not just because you paid for my hotel. They did. So Amplitude plays a key part because we send a lot of tracking events to Amplitude, and then they expose it in a Redshift cluster, which we actually use a lot. So, so we use Amplitude a lot day to day. In addition, we have been doing some work with Apache Spark. Amplitude also surfaces raw data on S3, so we can pipe that into EMR clusters for more complex offline analyses. We use a lot of IPython notebooks, and we just query data through APIs and from Redshift into that to kind of just navigate data and do stuff that we can't easily do in a UI and compile reports. Those are probably some of the key tools. We have the data team has an analytics repo of code. We write a lot of code in Python to make our lives easier to handle some data pipelining. We pipe some data from our production databases into Redshift as well. And yeah, so we're always trying to get better at it, and there's always something that I want to implement. There's so many things you can do with IPython notebooks these days that we're not doing, just as an example. But those are the basics.
Like in the beginning, how do you grow the app? Like for 2 years ago, is organic grow with a buzz because the user experience was really great? Or you spend a lot of money with advertisement?
I'd say probably both. QuizUp was launched in November 2013, and it was one of those breakout hits for sure. I mean, it just caught on like wildfire. There was marketing, there was, at the launch, there was some money spent on marketing, and then we just had to stop because the servers weren't holding up. So I think QuizUp is an unusual one. When you launch an app, you don't expect that. They didn't, I say they, I wasn't at the company at the time, but they certainly were not expecting that rapid growth. But now we're at a point where we're trying to grow organically. So at that point, it was kind of unusual and breakout hit style. But when we launch our 2.0 product, that's a different type of launch. Then we're iterating on an established product, and we need to keep growing. So all our growth is now organic. We're not doing any paid acquisition, incentivized or anything. We don't even do advertising at this point, except through YouTubers will feature our app, something like that. But we definitely rely on the kind of being able to share the app. Qualitatively, we figured out that a lot of our growth has been through just word of mouth. People talk about it, and because it has that social aspect, you want to be playing against your friend. People will tell somebody to install the app. So that's been our primary growth driver. Does that? Yeah.
Hi, you said all your growth is coming from organic channels, right? I'm just wondering, do you think it makes sense to add some marketing into it, some paid channels into it to sort of help it grow, or?
So we do marketing usually around big product launches, the 2.0 launch, which was in May. We did some marketing around that. We even tried incentivized installs, which we don't really recommend, at least not for an app like ours, because retention of users that are incentivized to install the app is not great. At least by our experience. But yeah, we definitely, there will come a time when we're going to be doing more marketing. I think we're getting a lot of quote-unquote free publicity through that primetime TV show in next year. That's, you can definitely consider that marketing. That's it's going to be plastered on billboards and stuff, which is interesting and weird. But but yeah, we don't have any plans currently to start like advertising through ad networks or advertising online or anything like that.
Do you not advertise because you find more meaningful, I guess, user retention from current users sharing? And what sort of incentives did you sort of roll out that didn't work?
So yeah, you're right. I mean, users that come in through organic channels tend to have better retention. It depends a little bit on the ad channel. Like advertisements that are surfaced inside other games actually work fairly well because those are actual gamers that are interested. They will click the ad and they will tend to have pretty good retention. There's an ulterior motive as well. We want to really understand how our social network is growing, and we want to understand that without the impact of marketing. We want to see how we can grow the product organically without just kind of forcing it through marketing. As far as the incentivized, so I forget what the incentives were precisely. There are ad networks that offer that type of thing. So install this app and you get a free something or other, or discounts. I think there was a few different variations on it. But the tendency was for people to install the app and then not even do anything in the app. They would just install it, get their free gift, whatever it was, and then not become a good user. It also matters who are the users that you're actually reeling in, and that divide was kind of highlighted. Users that had no real interest in the app versus users that were avid gamers and were clicking an ad because they were actually interested in playing an app like it. So yeah, definitely some good learnings from that process.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, do you guys track kind of how people hear about the app, or are you tracking people tweeting it out, and then which user tweeted it out, and then who clicked on that, and then who installed the app from that, and how do you do that?
So yes, but not as well as I'd like. So that's one of the things that we've been trying to improve on since I joined. We recently started using branch metrics for that. And that's just something that I think we can get better at. It is very important to understand where users are coming from. We have done some qualitative research on that, which is of course not, you do that every now and then to kind of, you survey users, but that's not like a primary source of data for us. Short of it, we want to get better at it. I think it is important.
All right, Jon, before I let you go, what's one trivia topic that you're unbeatable at?
Sorry, what's that?
What's one trivia topic that you're unbeatable at?
The thing is, I'm not good at trivia at all. I hate to admit that. I don't know. I tend to do good in Arrested Development.
I will challenge you to that.
All right.
All right, Jon, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thanks everyone.